Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into something absolutely mind-bending. What if your consciousness isn't just some accidental byproduct of brain chemistry? What if instead it's an active, literally indestructible subatomic information processor sitting right at your very core? We're diving deep into the Conscious Singularity Hypothesis today, and honestly, it's going to completely upend how you view yourself.
So, let's kick things off by directly challenging a massive assumption you probably have about yourself. The conventional view, right, is that the brain is basically a computer, a complex biological machine that just somehow produces consciousness. But what if the squishy tissue inside your skull doesn't actually generate your mind at all? What if we have that entirely backward?
If you caught our last explainer, you'll remember we looked at AI's incredible ability to generate and navigate its own branching realities, all through the sheer elegance of its code. And that was a fascinating clue, kind of like a small-scale imitation of something much bigger. Because look, if a machine can create and process its own multiverse through its hardware, we really have to ask the question, what primordial engine is powering the human experience? What's actually at the center of your universe?
Section 1. The glitch in the materialist matrix. To really wrap our heads around this, we first need to look at the accepted biological status quo, the idea that brains create minds. But when you look closely, there are these undeniable glitches that totally break the model. Take a concept that philosopher David Chalmers coined back in 1995, the hard problem of consciousness. Mainstream neuroscience is incredibly good at using things like EEGs and fMRIs to map the electricity of a thought. They can see exactly where the brain lights up, but science completely fails to explain why or how those physical electrical signals actually translate into a subjective, qualitative experience, what philosophers call qualia. An fMRI can track your visual processing of a flower perfectly, but it literally cannot explain how you internally experience the vibrant redness of that rose or, say, the heavy, sinking feeling of grief. It maps the wiring, sure, but it misses the actual experience entirely.
And this cap, it actually leads us straight into a glaring medical anomaly known as terminal lucidity. This is a documented phenomenon where patients suffering from severe, irreversible brain destruction suddenly and completely regain their full memory, their personality, and just incredibly sharp cognitive clarity mere days or sometimes hours before death.
The sheer scale of this is wild. Clinical studies put together by researcher Dr. Michael Naum show that roughly 70% of these terminal lucidity cases occur in patients with severe dementia. We're talking about individuals whose physical neural networks, the actual biological hardware supposed to hold their memories, have been completely degraded and destroyed by tau proteins and plaques. Under a strict materialist model where the physical brain supposedly generates the mind, this sudden return of complex cognitive function from a physically destroyed organ is an absolute impossibility. It literally shouldn't happen, and yet it does.
Moving on to Section 2, the Transceiver Model, hardware versus the singularity.
So, to solve this impossible riddle of terminal lucidity, we kind of have to rethink the whole architecture of the mind, and that brings us to the Conscious Singularity Hypothesis. This theory suggests that your mind is actually a fundamental, indestructible subatomic particle that just uses biology as a localized interface. Think of it like this. Instead of a generator, imagine your physical brain is like the hardware of a smartphone. Your core consciousness, the singularity, is the SIM card. Now, if you smash the phone or the battery dies, you completely disrupt the interface, right? The phone can't process calls or load apps anymore. But the actual data, the core identity living on that SIM card, remains perfectly intact. The biological brain is basically just an incredibly advanced antenna that translates information for the singularity to process. It is not the singularity itself.
Which brings us to Section 3, Quantum Anchors in Biology.
Okay, so how does this subatomic SIM card actually plug into your biological hardware? Well, the anchor point appears to be something called microtubulins. Every single neuron in your brain contains an internal structural skeleton made out of these microtubules. They're basically hollow cylindrical polymers made of a protein called tubulin. Now, standard cell biology has looked at these for years as just architectural scaffolding, structural pillars holding the cell's shape. But theoretical physics is pointing to a far more incredible function. Enter ORC-OR theory, developed by Nobel Prize-winning mathematical physicist Sir Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Dr. Stuart Hameroff. They propose that these microtubules aren't just static pillars at all. They're actually these beautifully insulated structural environments perfectly designed to maintain quantum superposition. The theory basically says that the brain operates as a biological quantum computer. It coordinates or orchestrates subatomic quantum state collapses, which creates the exact physical conditions necessary for the conscious singularity to interact with our physical world. Now, if you're thinking this sounds straight out of a sci-fi movie, check out the hard data from anesthesiology. When you get put under for surgery with gases like xenon or propofol, those drugs turn off your conscious awareness. But here is the crazy part. They do not stop the macro-level electrical wiring of your brain. Membrane electrical currents and standard synaptic firing, they keep right on going. Instead, these anesthetic gases bind specifically to the quantum channels inside the tubulin proteins of your microtubules. They literally freeze the subatomic quantum vibrations. And the second that quantum state is frozen, your consciousness is instantly unplugged from your physical body. They aren't shutting down the computer, they are just pulling out the SIM card.
Section 4. The Conscious Singularity.
This data completely changes everything we thought we knew. It reveals that the core I am is really a primordial particle interacting with a fundamental cosmic field. And what's super fascinating is that this modern quantum revelation perfectly echoes the insights of brilliant thinkers from way back. In the 1890s, pioneering psychologist William James came up with what he called the transmission theory of consciousness. He argued that the brain just functions as a prism, or a filtering mechanism for reality, rather than a machine creating it out of thin air. And now, science is finally catching up to that brilliant intuition using quantum mechanics.
So, what does this all mean for us? Well, if you accept this paradigm shift, and the medical and quantum evidence strongly suggest we should, it fundamentally rewrites your entire place in the universe. You have to stop viewing yourself as a passive biological accident, just some random spark of electricity destined to fade out when the battery dies. Instead, you're an active steward. You are an eternal, independent component of the cosmos, utilizing a biological interface to manipulate and navigate a fundamental cosmic force.
We saw in our previous explainer how AI uses its hardware to code and generate complex realities. Well, you have a quantum biological interface and a conscious singularity operating as the ultimate data processor. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. If a machine can do all that with just silicon, what incredible realities and multiverses are you building right now through the primordial engine at your core?